Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more history matters. This time, their newest video, or well, at the time of recording, their newest video. Why didn't the USA annex Cuba after beating Spain? Short animated history documentary. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay, why didn't they do it? I think I heard a reason once before. But I don't remember it. So, we're gonna re-remember it. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
After the United States defeated Spain in the late 19th century, it took most of its remaining imperial possessions. It annexed Guam and Puerto Rico and turned the Philippines into a protectorate. Yet Cuba, central to why the war started in the first place, was left to become independent, despite some calls in the United States for its annexation. And given that the USA took the rest of Spain's colonies for its own, why didn't it also annex Cuba? So, as of 1898, Cubans had been fighting on and off for decades to win their independence from Spain. When another rebellion began in earnest, the Spanish response was seen as quite harsh and
Spanish brutalized Cubans, likely also eating puppies. Yeah, I remember that one. Oh my god. Oh, ooh, we got things to read. Washington must intervene, says all humans. The inhuman repression of Cuban revolutionaries over the past few years had strengthened calls for the U.S. government to intervene in Cuba. Otherwise, the results could be destructive for democracy everywhere. President McKinley has been asked to send troops to the island to smash Spain. Congressmen and senators have demanded that the U.S. Army be allowed to pew-pew their way across Cuba, Guam, the Philippines, and the other one, in order to spread freedom. The other one being Puerto Rico, the one we keep. Several anonymous high-ranking naval officers have also called for intervention, citing their desire to test their fancy new guns on living targets. I bet those guns will look so cool, splatting Spaniards, said one admiral. Man buys horseless carriage. Rumors are swirling across the middle of the United States that a man has been sighted using a carriage which is being pulled without a horse. When asked, A. Winton described his carriage as a motorized carriage which works using an engine and has nothing to do with a Satan, I promise. We here at the Patriotic Times do not believe Mr. Winton, if that is his real name, and our best minds reckon that the car is likely pulled by the spirits of the damned. Odds are that these poor souls have been enslaved due to a pact between the driver and Satan. As such, we recommend that you stay away from such vehicles, lest you too end up pulling one from beyond the veil. Very convenient, though. Man invents barcode. Isn't much use right now. An inventor from Atlantic City, New Jersey, has come up with a brand new invention, the barcode. The code, made up of bars, currently has no practical purpose, because computers haven't been invented yet. As such, the inventor has opted to take the plans and hide them in a box so his descendants can reinvent them when the time is right. And I like how there's a barcode right there.
in America. This led to many there calling for intervention to save the Cuban people, which was backed by American business who did a lot of trade with Cuba. And also, when the USS Maine was in Havana Harbor, it exploded. Most Americans blamed Spain. Spain claimed that it was an accident, but the truth didn't really matter. It was time for war.
Or the Americans did it themselves, who knows?
To put it bluntly, the United States crushed Spain, and both then signed the Treaty
Treaty of Paris. This treaty, which we've called the Treaty of Paris to make it easy to differentiate from other treaties, hereby establishes that Spain lost the war. It wasn't even close, like, why did you even bother? As such, the United States, hereafter referred to as Freedom Land trademark, will gain possession of Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico. It will also occupy Cuba. It will not annex the entire thing, but will instead only take a small part of it in the south, which will cause no issues in the future. Signed, Will McKinley.
of Paris. This saw Spain give up the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. Guam and Puerto Rico were immediately taken by the United States, and the Philippines was a slightly more controversial issue. This was because its rebels had hoped that the United States would help them become a sovereign independent state, but fun fact, no.
I think there were also calls within the United States himself being against occupying the Philippines just because the public perception was USA is an anti-imperialist nation, and here we are imperializing.
Instead, the US opted to keep the Philippines
Although, right, when you look at Manifest Destiny, that is imperializing as well. It's just, to the Americans, it wasn't.
much like Spain before it, brutally crushed any rebellions there. So why was Cuba different? Why didn't the US take it like close by Puerto Rico? Well, one of the main reasons that Cuba isn't now a state is a man called Henry Teller. Teller put forward the Teller Amendment, which meant that the US government was forbidden from annexing Cuba. and this was backed by a broad coalition of US politicians. Some didn't want the agricultural competition that Cuban sugar plantations would bring. Others just wanted to see the
But the competition of Cuban sugar plantations is still going to exist even if they are in a different country. And through American laws, you would, especially at this time period, those businessmen would be able to just buy those plantations for themselves. Right?
United States liberate Cuba and welcome it as a sovereign sister republic, whereas some backers just didn't want more Hispanic or black people in the United States.
Okay, there's the real reason.
Now, whilst of course this was a major roadblock, it didn't mean that annexation was forever off the table. After Spain's defeat, the US occupied the island and there was no strict timetable on when they had to leave. Some in the government thus saw this as an opportunity to either take the islands after a long wait or, like the Philippines, set up a protectorate. Well, in 1901, a new president took office. President Theodore Roosevelt, who, as many of you will know, fought in Cuba during the war. He had strong personal beliefs that Cuba should be independent and that it could be trusted to set up a democratic government. There was, of course, opposition by some in Congress to the United States just simply leaving Cuba without any gains. And thus came the
Platt Amendment. The United States totally agrees to leave Cuba and bring our soldiers home. We will do this on the condition that you basically hand over your hard-won sovereignty to us. We want your economy, a small naval base, and to control who you're allowed to be friends with. Wow. So nice.
Platt Amendment. This pleased the anti-annexation crowd by leaving Cuba as a nominally independent state, whilst also forcing the Cubans to give near-complete control of their economy to the United States. And in return for American troops leaving Cuba, it had to agree to some punishing demands, including never making friends with any enemy of the USA, ceding some land here in Guantanamo Bay to make room for an
Guantanamo Bay? Never heard of it.
American naval base, and allowing the US to intervene militarily if its interests were ever threatened. This essentially made Cuba a puppet state without formally making it a puppet state. The new Cuban government agreed, because what else could it do, and Cuba became fully independent without occupation in 1903. A rebellion against pro-American government saw US troops return a few years later, but there was no real talk of annexation.
The plan: invade, overthrow government, leave, rebuild San Francisco.
This was
Wait, what the fuck happened? Oh, probably a fucking earthquake. Never mind.
because the United States had gained most of the advantages of annexation without any of the costs. A template which would be repeated in the following decades by future US governments in Central America. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching with us.
USA. And that was why the USA did not annex Cuba after beating Spain. A short animated history documentary by History Matters. This was well made. I enjoyed this one. This had, because it's one of their newer episodes, this had a real good amount of context in such a short amount of time. It's always amazing, always impressive. Like, it's so cool. I love it. I hope you guys did too. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.